You're listening to a podcast from thespoilist.com. Welcome to First Contact. After listening, you'll wish you didn't have any emotions either. I'm Andrew.
I'm James.
And I'm Alex.
This time we have been watching Hero Worship. It first aired the week of 27th of January 1992. It had a story by Hilary J. Bader, a teleplay by Joe Minoski, and was directed by your friend and mine, Patrick Stewart. James, what happens in this one?
The Enterprise investigates a missing ship in a wibbly purple region of space. The only survivor is a boy named Timothy, who Data rescues from under a pillar. Those are always falling on people in these situations. Timothy's way of dealing with trauma is to pretend to be an android, and he starts acting like Data, which allows us to play the TNG greatest hits of how weirdos in the future deal with grief, and Data hanging out with a child. Meaning the crew investigate what caused the accident and work out it's some weird echoey thing in space which amplifies power into a feedback loop, or something like that. It doesn't really matter. The important thing to learn is, don't go into purple regions of space.
Well, Alex, you'd never seen this episode before. What did you think of it?
Well, like some of the other episodes of the show that we've watched, this took 2 attempts for me to watch because I fell asleep during the first watch. Not necessarily reflective on the quality of the episode, just reflective on having a 4-year-old that doesn't want to go to bed.
It's not very good that this the second episode in a row that deals with children while you have a very young child of your own.
Yeah. It's a cliche to say it's basically fine. Well, it's our cliche, but I mean it is. It's good, but it's not going to set the world on fire. It's fair for something kind of weighty. It's surprisingly sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Not insignificant.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a memorable episode in any way. Very much pushing the character stuff to the fore in favour instead of the science fiction idea, which is fine. That's kind of what Star Trek Next Generation does. However, we spoke recently about revisiting ideas that the show's done before, and maybe doing them better now that the writers are a little more confident, or there's better writers working on the show. And this one, I was like, there was a child that died and didn't deal with it before. What was that? Oh, that was The Bonding, which is a season 3 episode. It was Ron Moore's first episode as a writer, and I was like, okay. And then Data's hanging out with the kid. Oh, we did that in Pen Pals. That was good, wasn't it? And the thing about this episode is it's doing things we've seen before, but I don't think it's necessarily adding anything to that. I don't think it is really doing anything better. I think it's a show that hinges very much on the guest star performance, and I don't think it's a bad performance, but I don't really massively care about Timmy and what happens to him.
No, quite. It feels almost that it's a bit too slight to be an A plot. And yet it shouldn't be, it's dealing with weighty themes, but it's hard to escape the feeling that it's sort of a budget-saving episode. I'm not saying that it necessarily was, it just has that feeling. It's so contained, and outside of Data and your guest star, there's not a huge amount for anyone else to do, which is helpful with Patrick directing. But yeah, it feels like an episode 5 in a 6-episode run.
I think there is a problem with Data in this particular situation because he can't learn and he can't emote, and it's just like, well, what's the arc that Data goes through when encountering this child? Oh, he remains exactly the same.
I mean, he can't learn in an emotional sense, but he can learn to understand how to deal with certain situations, or certainly how humans deal with certain situations.
I was just thinking during the entire episode when Troy goes, Data, you should spend time with him. Data, you should go hang out with him now. And I was like, Data's on the clock right now. And I don't think this is in his job description.
They just don't want him on the bridge. He's just very, very annoying. Can't blame him.
So I guess let's get into this. Let's start at the beginning. The Enterprise is answering a distress call or going to investigate a missing ship, rather.
Generic opening.
Very generic, isn't it? We're going into the black custard.
The black custard. Now that I'd watch.
They've already had that Skin of Evil in season 1.
Oh god, yeah. I take it back. I wouldn't watch that again.
They're going in to explore the interior of a black cluster to see if they can contact the research vessel Vico. Yeah, it feels like, and then they're going into the ship. Like, how many times have we seen the away team go onto the ship that's kind of in disarray and...
Oh, there's one survivor.
and I guess the what you play there, like, is either, yeah, did the boy do it? Is he sinister? Is he some kind of weird alien who's taken the form of a boy and done something awful to the crew, or was this just a disaster? I don't feel they really do play that. There is a bit at the end where he's going, I did it, but there's never any indication that he did.
No, I thought that was very odd as well, because I had that feeling at the start of, oh, has he possibly done this? And then, yeah, they just didn't really do anything with that until very close to the end, where suddenly it develops into a mystery, which I suppose there was a bit of a mystery element, but it did feel like they'd forgotten it for a large part of the runtime of the episode. Which is very odd to suddenly at the end go, it's not, we need to fill out the time a little bit. Mystery!
But I mean, they write off the idea of him causing the accident pretty much outright, straight away. He believes that he caused the accident, which kind of is probably part of his grief. But he didn't actually cause it, which is why you can't really hang the mystery on it. It would need to be more explicit in order to do that.
There's probably scope to have done it somehow, just to play up the idea of what happened a bit more, rather than what happened. We were attacked. Fair enough. It just feels like it comes in quite late. I mean, I'm aware that it's kind of ongoing with them investigating. Everyone else investigating what's going on in this pocket of space. I don't know. Let's come back in 5 minutes and check again. But yeah, I don't know.
But it's not introduced to set up a mystery. It's introduced to explain why Timothy feels the way he does. He blames himself for something which he could never have done.
That's all fair. Do you know what? I would have liked him to have done something more than lent on a panel. I would have liked... We had a massive fight and I wished they were all dead or something like that. I want his guilt to be hung on something a bit more than... You know, in the 24th century, people must be leaning on panels all the time, you know. And he's a young person. He would know how the technology works better than anyone. He wouldn't think he could have made... I mean, he lent on a panel and... Is it weird that everybody did die? Like, obviously it's like a big wave hit the ship and murdered everyone in some very non-specific way, but everybody.
They just sort of fell about a bit.
Yeah, except for Timothy, who's... I mean, see if we go right to the start of the rescue, and it's like, everyone leave the ship. There might be a ship quake if I lift this pillar up, so everyone go away. I'll stay because I'm expendable. Don't worry about me. I'll stay. I'll try and save the child. I expected him to be injured under the pillar rather than instantly jumping up and running around.
Didn't the previous episode end with a child trapped under a pillar and somebody rescuing him using superhuman strength? And this episode opens with a child under a pillar and somebody saving him with superhuman strength.
I mean, I don't remember what the last episode was.
I was going to say, what was the last episode?
It was Alexander trapped under the thing with the hand puppets.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that is an eminently forgettable episode, followed by another eminently forgettable episode.
We're very much in the summer holidays period of the show, aren't we?
They must have been, when they were making it, gone, did we not just use this pillar on a child?
Get the child pillar out.
That's no way to speak about Michael.
I mean, the investigation, I suppose we can talk about.
Investigation? I mean, marginally. Oh, sorry, you mean in general into the wibbly. Yeah.
Into the wibbly thing in space. It's... do you know what? I don't really have anything to say about it.
Well, it's because it's a sort of very generic TNG. There's this wibbly thing. Well, we better have a look into the wibbly thing. Do you know what it is? No, I'm going to go and run some tests. You do that, we'll come back after the adverts. Any progress? No, none at all, Captain. Next advert break.
And of course, I've seen this before, but in my defence, I really don't remember it. But I'm sure all of us watching it were like, yeah, look, it's your shields, it's your power output that is causing the wibbly thing. Just turn that off. You feel like you're ahead of them, and that they're not very bright for not seeing it. It's like, more power. The energy wave is increasing. Even more power. Let's tie in the warp engines. We've never done that before. Well, now we do.
Yeah, I mean, that is the one thing that I had been saying in previous episodes that was a big improvement on this season, and indeed like the last season and probably the one prior to that, was that the first couple of seasons of the show, there were a lot of episodes where you were so far ahead of the crew, and it was quite tedious at times. This is the episode this season that's been the most guilty of it so far, I feel. I mean, it's still a lot more competent than any of those other ones, but yeah, there's not a lot of scope of, what could be happening here? And let's be honest, there isn't that scope, because that's not really what they're interested in. They're interested in dealing with trauma.
I guess talking of characters and how they look after people who have been through a trauma, did anyone else find it weird that Timothy seems to have his own quarters on his own?
I hadn't noticed that he had.
Data just goes and visits when he's building his model.
Yeah, I suppose he does, doesn't he?
He doesn't seem to have any kind of guardian, which, I don't know, maybe that's fine. I don't know if this is in the writing or if it's in the casting or what it is, but do you think, based on the actor, the character is maybe acting a little young?
I mean, I don't know what age he's supposed to be, but
no,
he comes across as sort of 7 or 8, I suppose.
He's supposed to be 10, I think.
Yeah, no, he definitely comes across as younger than that.
But I thought he sort of looks a bit older than that, but I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I'm not very good at judging children. The thing that really impresses him, like, obviously the pillar lifting is a big impression, but then when Data comes in, recognises the model that he's working on, the Doctrine Temple of Kuro Hanesh, of course, we all remember building those in school, I'm sure, and then Data finishes it really quickly, and it's like, I think one of the least impressive effects I've ever seen in TNG, and just it's like, it's not an impressive thing. It's like, if you could do that effect, it's like, he finished the jigsaw. And it's like, he put 2 levels onto a tower. And it just looks so rubbish. It's like, you know what? I think I probably could have done that in the same amount of time.
Yeah, it's a very low bar for being impressive, isn't it? Also, it's a bit of a shit model as well, let's be honest. There's a startling lack of detail. It's very Lego 101.
If he'd done like an Eagle Moss Enterprise D, that would have been much more complicated, because there's lots of fiddly glue bits and stuff like that.
Well, you're not going to do an Eagle Moss Enterprise D since they've gone out of business.
Well, there's a very lively second-hand market. It would be an antique in that era. It'd be difficult to explain.
We've skipped over the horrible teacher who chastises Timothy for continuing to build the model. A kid has just lost both of his parents. It is not model time. You must put the model down now.
Sounds like me at bedtime.
It feels very not of this era. I mean, I don't know why he's not smiling and laughing and interacting with the other people. I mean, to be fair, Troy is like, people might act differently after going through a period of grief. Right? Oh.
Do you not think that the ship's counsellor should probably be more involved in this child going through massive trauma rather than farming it out?
It's very much, Data, can you deal with this one? It's just I'm a little bit busy.
Who is the best person to deal with this boy's emotional trauma? Oh, the man who can't feel emotion. Of course. It makes so much sense.
You know what? I'm going to defend Troy. I think she's right there. She sees the connection that Timothy has with Data, and she believes that that will be a good place for him to begin to heal.
I'm just not sure that farming it out to the Robo-Man, who often has misunderstandings due to his inability to properly process emotion, is necessarily the safest option for a vulnerable child.
Maybe not, but at the same time, they clearly do have a connection. And I don't think she's farming it out. I'm sure she's having regular meetings with Timothy.
Well, I do love a meeting. Do they just leave him in those quarters for most of the day? It just Data just makes a flying visit, goes in, messes up playtime by building the model, and just he's got no fun left to build the bloody thing himself, and then just wanders off with a vague promise that it would be acceptable to do it again. No commitment, just, yeah, it'd be alright, I suppose. And then just leaves the child there overnight. Has he got food?
He's got a replicator.
What? Can he get alcohol out of the replicator?
It's in the hull.
Oh, that's fine then.
He's got to stay in those quarters because he can't go back to school after ruining story time.
Well, exactly. You've got to be punished if you make any mistakes in the classroom. There's no throwing any puppies in the warp core for you.
You know what? If they threw those puppies into that warp core, the ship would have been destroyed at the end.
Exactly. So,
Captain, we're being attacked by the force of 1,000 dogs.
They would have worked that out really quickly then, wouldn't they? If they saw the giant Labrador just running through the nebula.
Just the sound of the hull tearing apart while the sound of a small puppy going, arp.
The puppies are echoing back to us.
I think like my favourite and the most memorable thing about this episode is when he puts on a jumper that looks a bit like Data's uniform. Now, presumably you can get anything, any item of clothing from a replicator, or although most people tend to favour a jumpsuit, but he gets like a sort of almost a cosplay version of Data. It's just a little bit off, which is what we like to see when people are dressing up as Star Trek characters.
And he gets Data to do his hair instead of Mott.
Data is excellent with a brush.
I mean, that's an ideal barber, really, isn't it? A man. Well, actually, no. I was going to say Data's an ideal barber in that it would largely be silent, but then a man that's unable to recognise certain human emotions and tells, and therefore unable to tell when you don't want to talk. I mean, that's just the description of the average barber.
My memory, or I guess, the folk memory of this episode would be, there's a child and he acts like Data for ages, and he does these scenes where he's acting like Data, and he moves his head funny, and that's good. I thought there was a lot more of it, to be honest. It's not a substantially large part of the episode.
That's about 2 or 3 scenes, isn't it?
Conversation with Troy, there's the hair scene,
and the painting.
Yeah, the painting's quite nice, I like that, except... yeah, obviously the sign of a troubled mind.
I mean, there's some charm in those bits. The giveaways, the trying not to fall asleep, the saying that you're an android, but then seeing the ice cream go past. Oh, well, we occasionally do taste. That feels fairly observed by someone with the experience of children of that age. That would chime with my life experience, but again, not insubstantial is the wrong word, but it's a nice piece, but it's a bit. That's it, really, isn't it? It's just a bit.
I guess that that section in 10 forward is echoed later in Generations when Data first does have emotion and he does taste. And I guess this is really the mirror image of that, the human wanting to be an android. So it's trying to flip that entire idea of Data on its head and see what that teaches us about the character.
And at the end of this, what have we learnt about Data that's new? Answers on a postcard.
Well, we get to learn something new about Geordie, don't we? The story about him as a child. And he was in a fire. And he didn't like being in the fire.
Geordie, it's stories like that always make me say, you truly are the raconteur of the ship. If we had our own intergalactic Peter Ustinov, I would say that you have that title, sir.
It's like I was really hoping for more. It felt like very much a first draft of Geordie's childhood trauma.
Yeah, and LaForge also tells Data that this was before he got his first visor. And Memory Alpha says that this implies that his current visor is not his first. Which I just found amusing that the person who written that just imagines Geordie's current visor on a 5-year-old child.
Also, I'm pretty sure it's a different visor from what was in the first season anyway, so, it is a different visor.
Maybe it's a modified version of the visor he had in season 1.
Trigger's visor.
He got promoted. He deserves an upgrade.
So he treated himself to a new visor.
Exactly.
Stepping back to that painting scene for a second, just one thing to flag. Data's painting a landscape. Is Timothy painting death? Is he painting the destruction of the ship? Because it's all sort of very red and jaggedy and explodey. It just gave me visions back of the crystalline entity.
That was how I was interpreting it. That he was doing a visual representation of the disaster that befell the ship.
Nice.
Well, you've got to process your grief, don't you? Through art. I guess the saying, time is a great healer.
Only as long as that time is just under an hour with adverts.
Yeah, well, absolutely. But Timothy helps Data make sure that the ship doesn't explode by explaining what they did before it exploded. Yeah, he went through all that and said they were doing all this. This was all the stuff, and he still thought it was his fault. If it had been an instantaneous thing, I think that doesn't make sense. That's ruined all of Star Trek for me now.
Now, Timothy, can you remember anything else that they said? They said increase the shields. Yeah, they said that. Okay, can you remember anything else? No. Anything else? Oh, well, there was this other thing. Right. Anything else? Did they say ARG, maybe? My legs? Yeah, that scene is a little bit, as we said before, a little bit slow in that we know where it's heading, and it does feel a bit of a slog to get there. Although they do try and cover it later by having Data say that he'd already worked out what was happening, and while he's asking Timothy that, he's actually running reports in the background. Which, if true, maybe just flag it to someone else before leaving it till the last minute.
All's well that ends well, and they go and see him in the classroom, bonding with other children, being obedient as he should be, and doing the right activity at the right time.
Look at him, Data. He looks miserable. Ah, the correct way of things.
It does everything it sets out to do in an efficient, if forgettable way.
It was certainly an episode of The Next Generation.
I think that's exactly it. It was an episode of The Next Generation. Is it good? Not really. Is it bad? Not really. Is it watchable while it's on? More or less.
Maybe in 2 sittings.
I managed it in 1. I think that shows a level of maturity. it's not one I would put on my must-watch list. But also, if you're going to watch an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation with a child in it, it might as well be this one.
I'm sure there's better episodes with a child in. No offence to Hero Worship, but there are better. Pen Pals is a better episode. Maybe.
Anyway, yeah, let's abandon this here and then say a few bits of trivia in quickfire.
Quickfire.
Gene Roddenberry's dead. He died during the making of Hero Worship.
Well, that's very sad.
The news affected everyone deeply, especially Marina Sirtis, whose father had passed away exactly 10 years before.
The song Row, Row, Row Your Boat is sung, last heard in Star Trek V around the campfire. It's a Star Trek classic now and is also helpfully rights free. Brannon Braga, he said of the episode, "I like Hero Worship, the best of all the kids' shows, because it's the most interesting, good performances and an intriguing mystery, thinking the aliens had destroyed the ship, Picard saying, 'Make him the best android he can be,' and the scene where Data confesses to wishing that he knew what the taste of malted was like is very touching." Yes.
Rascals. Rascals is a better kid episode.
Rascals is a better kid episode. That's yeah, fine, that's decided.
Looking at the Star Trek The Next Generation companion, it says, "We also get a rare bit of Geordie background in this story, learning about the traumatic fire he suffered through at the age of 5 before receiving his first visor." I know, we just discussed it. The scenario was originally one of the memory scenes that was not used in Violations, because, as we'll address next time, if there was anything that episode needed, it was a bit more grimness.
Michael Pillar saw this as a good example of how the character Deanna Troi was expanded in later seasons, saying, "I think Hero Worship and as a whole, this has been a very good season for Deanna Troi. We've used her as a counsellor as well as she has ever been used. She certainly had more time on screen, and what I think comes out of it is proof that she's a really wonderful actress and has levels of credibility and truth on the screen. I'm a big fan of hers, and she really rose to the challenge this year." Joe Minosky, the writer of the episode, said, "It was a Troy-heavy episode, and I have a love-hate relationship with Troy. Loved the actress, but hated the character. I used to say that having a full-time therapist on board the Enterprise, in a command position no less, would date our series more than any other story element, and in retrospect, that was true." And reading both of these, this is not a Troy-heavy episode.
No, what episode are they watching?
But I do disagree with Joe Minosky. I don't think that having a therapist on the bridge and part of the crew dates it. I think it does make it feel like something that might happen in the future, that people treat mental health with more importance.
I think that's the benefit of 30 years distance.
I don't know when the comment by Joe Minosky was. It's looking back retrospectively. I'm sure you're both wondering what happened to Timothy after he left the Enterprise.
I can barely sleep with the worry.
Well, Memory Beta tells us in the Deep Space Nine novel Avatar Book 1, he is decapitated in a Klingon attack on Beta Z.
Marvellous.
I made that
Jesus
up because I made it up because there's absolutely nothing on Memory Beta about this episode.
The thing is, that's so credible for something.
It really is.
Well, that's about that for another episode. Thank you very much for listening. No, really, thank you. We don't know why you're doing it. How did you get to this section of this podcast? Do you know how many there are before this and how long this one's gone on for an episode that really didn't warrant it? Anyway, we'll be back again next time talking about Violations. Goodbye.
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 You know, the last time I got a haircut, they charged me the child's rate. I'm 30. I have facial hair.
What age does the child rate go up to?
I hope it continues.
Well, that's good. That's good. Did you leave a tip? Did you say my mum says I can leave you this?
Did they give you a lollipop? If not, frankly, whatever the discount, you've been robbed.